I still remember the first time he told me he loved me. The way his eyes softened, the way his fingers brushed against my cheek, it felt like something out of a dream I had spent my whole life waiting for. I thought I had finally found it, the love that would last forever. The kind you read about in books, the kind that makes you believe in fate. He was charming, attentive, and made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. I had never known love like that before, or at least, I thought I hadn't. I look back now, and I see all the little things I ignored, the way he never really opened up, how he always had the perfect words but never any real depth. How, sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, his eyes weren't filled with love, but calculation. But at the time, I didn't see it, or maybe I just didn't want to. We moved fast, too fast. Within months, we were engaged. Everyone told me it was too soon, that love like this wasn't real, that I should take my time. But I didn't listen. I was too caught up in him, in us, in the perfect picture he painted for me. The wedding was a dream. Or at least, it looked like one. The venue was breathtaking. The guests were all smiling, and my husband, he stood at the altar, watching me as if I was the most precious thing in the world. His vows were perfect, his touch gentle, and in that moment, I was sure he was my forever. But forever ended sooner than I thought. The first few months of marriage were just as perfect, or maybe, I should say, they appeared that way. He was the doting husband, thoughtful, sweet, always knowing exactly what to say. He'd bring me coffee in bed, leave little love notes on the counter, kiss me like he couldn't get enough of me. But now, I realize, it was all a show. Because love is supposed to feel safe, love is supposed to be real. And his love, it was neither. The first crack appeared when I overheard him on the phone late at night. I wasn't trying to listen, but something about the way he spoke, low, sharp, almost impatient, made me pause. She believes everything. The words hit me like ice. I stood there in the hallway, my heart pounding, my breath shallow. Who was he talking about? And why did he sound so different? I wanted to tell myself I misheard, that it wasn't about me, that I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew better. Something was wrong. And I was about to find out just how deep the lie went. I should have confronted him that night. I should have walked into the room, demanded an answer, and forced him to tell me the truth, but I didn't. Instead, I stood there, my fingers gripping the doorframe, listening to the sound of his voice. She believes everything. Those words echoed in my mind, over and over again. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe he was talking about something else, someone else. But something inside me, a deep, gnawing fear, told me that wasn't true. That night, when he came to bed, he wrapped his arms around me like nothing had happened. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, whispered, "I love you," and held me close. And I let him. Because I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that I hadn't just married a stranger. But the cracks kept growing. It started with the little things. The way he was always just a little too secretive with his phone. He'd angle the screen away from me, close apps the second I walked by, and claim it was just work. The times he was supposed to be at work late but came home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't his. The sudden, unexplained financial transactions. Money disappearing from our joint account, vague excuses about investments, bills being paid later than usual. I noticed it all, but every time I tried to bring it up, he had an answer ready. A smooth, practiced explanation. "You're overthinking, baby. You know I'd never do anything to hurt you. I work hard for us. I just need you to trust me. Don't ruin this with your doubts." And so I swallowed my suspicions, again and again. Because the alternative? It was too terrifying to face. But the moment I found the letter hidden in his desk drawer, there was no more room for doubt. My hands shook as I unfolded it. A legal document. And when my eyes scanned the words, my world collapsed. My husband had been planning his escape. I wasn't his forever. I was his investment. And now that he had everything he wanted, he was leaving. My hands trembled as I clutched the letter, my eyes scanning the words over and over, desperately hoping, praying that I was somehow misunderstanding. But the truth was there, in black and white. It wasn't just a simple legal document. It was a plan. A carefully constructed, methodically executed plan. A financial agreement with his name signed at the bottom, outlining every move he had made and every move he was going to make. It detailed a separate bank account I never knew existed, where he had been discreetly transferring money from our joint savings. A pre-drafted divorce settlement was attached, one that ensured I would walk away with nothing. A property under his name alone, bought months before our wedding, confirming that all this time, he had been securing his escape while I was building a life with him. And then, at the very bottom, a date. A date that was just 2 months away. That's when he planned to leave. That's when he would walk away clean. I felt the air leave my lungs. Had any of it been real? Had I spent all these years loving a man who had never truly loved me back? My mind raced, trying to find an explanation, some reason that would make this feel less like a cruel, calculated betrayal. But there was none. I had never been his wife. I was his investment. His stepping stone. His tool. And now that he had what he wanted, I was disposable. I sat in the dim light of the living room, staring at the document for hours, my thoughts spiraling into an abyss of disbelief and pain. When I finally heard the door creak open, I didn't move. His familiar footsteps echoed through the silent house, each step sending a wave of nausea through me. Then, his voice calm, casual, laced with the same practiced warmth he had always used. "Baby? Why are you sitting in the dark?" Slowly, I reached over and turned on the lamp. The soft yellow glow illuminated the paper lying on the table before me. I didn't say anything. I just waited for him to see it. He stepped closer, his eyes flickering over the document. There was no sudden panic, no guilt, no attempt to deny what was in front of him. He just let out a quiet sigh, as if I had stumbled upon something mildly inconvenient. That was it. No scrambling for an excuse, no desperate apologies, just a sigh. "You weren't supposed to see that," he muttered. A sharp, bitter laugh bubbled in my throat, but I swallowed it down. "What is this?" My voice was steady, but my fingers curled tightly against my palm, nails digging into my skin. He ran a hand through his hair, his expression unreadable. "It's not what you think," he said smoothly. "Not what I think?" The words felt foreign in my mouth, hollow and meaningless. "So explain it to me." He exhaled slowly, as if I was the one being unreasonable, as if I had walked into this house and accused him of something ridiculous. Then, his mask slipped. "You were useful." A chill ran down my spine. I stopped breathing. "You made things easier for me. You gave me stability. A home, a way to look responsible, trustworthy." He shrugged, completely unfazed by the look of devastation on my face. "But I never planned for it to be forever." The words crashed into me like a tidal wave, knocking the breath from my lungs. You were useful. Not loved, not cherished, not even respected. Just useful. I stared at him, feeling something inside me fracture. The man I had built my life around, the man I had shared my most vulnerable moments with, had been playing a role this entire time. Every "I love you" was rehearsed, every kiss, calculated, every moment, nothing more than a part of his grand performance. And now, he was done playing the role of the devoted husband. Now, he was revealing who he truly was. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, anything, but instead I sat there, frozen in place, while his words sank deeper into my chest, pressing against my ribs like a blade. "You were useful." That's all I had ever been to him. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was sleeping next to a monster. But I wasn't going to let him win. Something inside me snapped, not in an explosive, fiery rage, not in a whirlwind of shattered glass and screaming accusations. It was quieter than that. It was the kind of breaking that feels like sinking, like slipping beneath the surface of deep, dark water, and realizing no one is coming to save you. I stared at him, at the man I had loved, the man I had trusted, and felt nothing. No anger, no heartbreak, just a hollow, quiet void stretching inside me. "That's it?" I finally whispered. "That's all I was to you?" He sighed again, rubbing his temples as if this was exhausting for him, as if I was exhausting. "I told you it's not that simple." But it was. It was the simplest thing in the world. He never loved me. I let out a slow breath, steadying myself against the tidal wave of emotions threatening to drown me. I had given him everything: my time, my love, my trust, and in return, he had been plotting his exit from the start. "Why?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just needed to hear him say it. He leaned against the table, arms crossed, and studied me like I was an equation he had already solved. "Because you were easy." That was the moment the last piece of my heart shattered. "You were easy to love, easy to convince, easy to use. You trusted too much. You didn't question things, and that worked for me." He shrugged. "But this isn't personal. It's just life." Just life. Like I was a transaction, a stepping stone to whatever future he had planned. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat, my hands curled into fists, nails biting into my palms, but I refused to break. Not in front of him. Not after everything. So, what happens now? I asked. He glanced at the document still lying on the table, his expression unreadable. Now, we move forward. I'll make sure you get a fair deal. I laughed, a quiet, bitter sound. He still thought he was in control. He still thought I was weak. He had no idea what was coming. That night, as he slept soundly in our bed completely unbothered by the wreckage of my heart, I made my own plans. I sat in the dim glow of my laptop screen, going through our accounts, tracing every hidden transaction. I found the lies, the loopholes, the carefully placed cracks he thought I'd never notice. And then, I did something he never expected. I emptied the accounts. I froze every asset in my name. I contacted the lawyer before he could. By the time he woke up the next morning, everything he thought was his was gone. He found me in the kitchen, sipping my coffee like nothing had changed. The moment his eyes locked onto mine, I saw the confusion flicker into realization. He reached for his phone, tapping rapidly, his breathing turning sharp as he checked every account, every backup plan. Nothing. He had nothing. Where's the money? His voice was sharp now. No more fake sweetness, no more soft words. The mask had finally dropped. I took a slow sip before meeting his gaze. It's not personal, I said, echoing his own words. It's just life. For the first time since this all started, he looked afraid. And that's when I knew I had already won. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before: fear. It was subtle, buried beneath his usual arrogance, but it was there. He had always been so sure of himself, so certain that he had control over me, over this entire situation. But now, the ground beneath him was crumbling. He stood there, staring at me, his phone clutched in his hand, his fingers white-knuckled as he scrolled through the empty accounts. His breathing was shallow, his jaw clenched tight, and for the first time, I saw it the moment he realized he had lost. What did you do? His voice was sharp, stripped of any pretense. Gone was the smooth-talking man who once whispered sweet nothings into my ear, the man who convinced me that I was his world. This was the real him, cold, furious, scrambling to regain control. I tilted my head slightly, taking another sip of my coffee, relishing the slow, agonizing unraveling happening right before me. I did what you were planning to do. I just did it first. His nostrils flared, his hands curling into fists at his sides. You have no right. A quiet laugh escaped my lips, but there was nothing warm about it. No right? I repeated, my voice calm, almost amused. You stole years from me. You played with my life like I was nothing more than a stepping stone. You lied, manipulated, and used me for everything you could take. I leaned forward slightly, my gaze never leaving his. So don't talk to me about rights. I expected him to explode, to lash out, to show me exactly who he was without the mask, but instead, he took a slow breath, his expression smoothing out into something eerily neutral. The panic was still there, but now, it was buried beneath calculation. He was already replanning, already adjusting. Even now, even after being caught, he thought he could talk his way out of this. You don't understand, he said, his voice lowering as he slipped back into that same careful charm. I was going to make sure you were taken care of. I wasn't going to leave you with nothing. Spare me. I cut him off, my voice flat, emotionless. You're not going to talk your way out of this. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw frustration crack through his carefully constructed facade. I had always been the woman who loved too much, trusted too blindly. I had always been his easy target. But not anymore. You think this is over? He asked, his voice lower now, darker. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor, my heart pounding with a strength I hadn't felt in years. It is for me. I turned away, walking past him without hesitation, my pulse steady, my resolve stronger than ever. But just as I reached the doorway, his voice stopped me in my tracks. You'll regret this, he murmured. I turned back, meeting his gaze one last time. He still thought he had power over me, still thought his words could plant seeds of doubt, still make me question myself. But he didn't realize something: I had already lost everything. My trust, my dreams, the future I thought we were building together, all of it was gone. And yet, standing there in front of him, I felt lighter than I ever had before. A slow smile spread across my lips, not out of amusement, but out of absolute certainty. I already regret ever believing in you, I said, my voice steady, unbreakable. But I don't regret this. And then, without another word, I walked away. I packed my things that night, moving through the house with a sense of quiet determination. Every trace of him, every painful memory, Every reminder of the life I thought we had it all went into boxes. Not because I was running, not because I was broken, but because I was done. I had spent too long holding on to an illusion, waiting for a man who was never really mine to begin with, but no more. By the time I locked the door behind me for the last time, I didn't feel pain, I didn't feel loss. I felt free. People always say betrayal destroys you, that it leaves you hollow and unfixable, but they're wrong. It doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. And what I saw when I looked in the mirror now, I saw a woman who survived. I wouldn't waste another second mourning the love that was never real. I wouldn't spend another moment waiting for closure that didn't matter. Because I had already found it. I was finally free. And as I stepped into the world on my own terms, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never look back.